The capture of Constantinople. After years of fighting and conquering, the Turkish armies had expanded the borders of the Ottoman Empire to an enormous size, and as the Ottoman Empire expanded, the Byzantine Empire shrank. Now, the Byzantine Emperor only had one city to call his own, Constantinople. The Turks had attacked it again and again, but could not break through its walls. In 1444, a new sultan came to the Ottoman throne, Mehmed the Conqueror. From the moment he became sultan, Mehmed was determined to take Constantinople for his own. Mehmed was a crafty warrior. He spent months pretending to be on good terms with the Byzantine emperor, sending friendly messages to the court, but all the time he was planning to attack. He was building cannon so huge that each cannon had to be pulled by 100 oxen. He was preparing to fight with gunpowder. He was hiring mercenaries, paid soldiers from other countries, and he was quietly assembling his army, ready to send his warriors against Constantinople in a final attempt to take the city. When the Byzantine emperor realized that Mehmed was preparing for war, he sent messengers to protest. Mehmed cut off their heads. The war had begun. Mehmed marched his armies up to the western wall of the city, the only wall that could be reached by land. Remember, Constantinople was surrounded by water on 3 sides. He sent a message to the emperor, inviting him to surrender. The Byzantine soldiers inside Constantinople were outnumbered by Mehmed's Turkish army 12-1. But the emperor refused to give up without fighting, so Mehmed began to fire his cannon against the wall. The defending soldiers didn't know how to guard their city against these loud, destructive new weapons. The cannonballs cracked the walls and crumbled the tops of the towers. The walls stood firm, though. Cannonballs alone wouldn't bring Constantinople down. Mehmed knew that the only way to conquer the city was to surround it with his warships and attack it from all sides. But although he had his troops lined up along the western wall and his warships attacking the southern wall from the water, he couldn't reach the northern wall of Constantinople. The only way to get to this northern wall was to sail his ships up into the Golden Horn, the harbor, a deep, quiet body of water where ships can anchor, on the city's north side. But the entrance to the Golden Horn was guarded by Byzantine ships, and the Ottoman warships couldn't break through. One morning, the Byzantine armies were gazing over the western walls when they saw an extraordinary sight: ships sailing on the land. Mehmed had ordered his armies to attach hundreds of ropes to the warships anchored on the southern side of the city. Thousands of men and cattle hauled on these ropes to pull the warships up onto the land, right past the western wall of the city, down into the northern waters. 70 ships traveled past the horrified onlookers and slid right down into the Golden Horn, far away from the Byzantine ships guarding the other end of the harbor. Now the Turks could attack the city from all sides. As the fighting continued, the city began to run out of food. Water became scarce. Some of Constantinople's people tried to escape from the city late at night, when the Turkish camp was asleep. But others said, "Constantinople won't fall. Remember, the city is safe until the moon turns dark." Almost 2 months after the siege began, the Turkish army lay outside Constantinople, waiting for morning. The moon shone brightly down, casting long, clear shadows next to the tents. Suddenly, the moon began to disappear, a little at a time, as though some enormous creature were slowly eating it away. The Turkish soldiers began to murmur and point, and then to shout with joy. And inside the city, the Byzantine defenders were struck with horror. Was this a sign of disaster? Actually, it was an eclipse. The earth had moved between the sun and the moon, blocking the sun's light so that it could not reflect from the moon's surface. But no one knew this. The Muslim Turks and the Byzantine Christians both thought that the eclipse predicted the end of the war. The Turks began to prepare for a final attack. The priests in Constantinople held a final Christian service in the Hagia Sophia, the great Christian cathedral. The last Byzantine emperor attended this service and then went out to join his soldiers in their fight against the invaders. The Turks threw themselves against the walls. Finally, one of the gates to the city was forced open. Mehmed, seeing the defenders fall, shouted to his men, "Friends, we have the city!" The Ottoman Turks poured into the city. The emperor was killed in the fighting, and the Turks flooded through Constantinople, stealing and killing. Some of the troops turned to the houses of the rich, writes the Greek historian Critouvalas, who lived during this time. They robbed the wealthy, others looted the churches, they threw crosses and holy cups into the street and broke them into fragments, and burned holy books, and still more went to the houses of the people. They stole, plundered, murdered, and took slaves, men and women, children and old people, priests and monks. 10,000 terrible deeds were done. Mehmed went straight to the Hagia Sophia and set his throne right in the middle of it. His men began to make the cathedral into a Muslim mosque. 4 days after the last Christian service in the Hagia Sophia, the first Muslim service was held there, and the city of Constantinople was renamed Istanbul, a name it still bears today. The fall of Constantinople on May 29, 1453, is one of the great events of medieval history. From this moment on, the way of life begun by the Romans centuries ago was truly over. The last remnants of the old Roman Empire had disappeared. Sometimes the conquest of Constantinople is called the end of the Middle Ages.